Hi and hello everyone. This isn't like my typical video that I post out. Usually I just do unboxings and minor reviews. And this really came up with what I've been reading. So we have Arkham Horror the card game, and we have Earthborne Rangers. Interesting parts and why I showed some of the stuff for the video of Callisto Protocol and Dead Space. Arkham Horror is Dead Space to me. I love this game. Earthborne Rangers, like Dead Space, was made by Andrew Navarro, who was the head of FFG, and he worked on a bunch of my favorite games, especially Arkham Horror, and then he worked on some of the counterparts to Arkham Horror, as in the Lord of the Rings card game and Marvel Champions. And I bring this up because when I first heard of Earthborne Rangers and Andrew Navarro's involvement, I was super pumped. And I was like, oh, I'm going to love this. It's going to be all the stuff, extra stuff to Arkham because he has more freedom now than being controlled. And it got to me, I was feeling like I was playing Callisto Protocol. In fact, the experience was very similar. Because Callisto Protocol was designed by Glenn Schofield, who is the father of Dead Space. And if you played Dead Space back in, I think, the early 2000s, it was an amazing game. I haven't played the remake yet, and it's on my to-do list when it goes on sale. And I couldn't stand Callisto Protocol. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out why I didn't like Callisto Protocol. And I was watching one of my favorite YouTube video makers, Lemon, from his channel The Backlogs, and he did a review, and he kind of pointed out a lot of the stuff that I was just like, this I feel is why I don't like Earthborne Rangers. And this brings me to why this video exists. So if you stayed with me this far, I really appreciate it. I like to remind you that I'm still doing the 2023 giveaway. I highly encourage you to sign up for that. And I'm really close to actually sending out one of the first prizes at a 100 subscriber mark. And if you don't want to hear what I have to say about Earthborne Rangers, that's fine. That's cool. Whatever. But for those of you that stayed, I just want to explain the thought process of why I don't really think Earthborne Rangers is great. Especially since I read a lot of reviews, and I look at a lot of channels, YouTube, Reddit, Board Game Geek, I'm reading stuff. And a lot of people support Earthborne Rangers. I have no problem with that. Like, you do you love your game. My issue is really, a lot of people say that Earthborne Rangers is a less punishing version of Arkham. Some say it's better than Arkham Horror, and I'm kind of confused. Because they say it's fair, you can play your way, it's not restricted, it's not depressing, it's dark or gloomy, and it's an open world. And I disagree with a lot of those claims because I don't think they've actually given Arkham Horror the chance. So if you're on the fence, this is definitely a video for you. Earthborne Rangers, coming from Andrew Navarro, shares a lot of its DNA with Arkham Horror. But to say that it's open or less punishing than the reviews, I don't think that's right. Earthborne Rangers has all the hallmarks of a great game, but it also has all the flaws of Arkham Horror without any of the benefits, and this could be intentional. Here I have Arkham Horror, the LCG, on my left, and Earthborne Rangers on my right. So far they look pretty similar. Both kind of take up the same amount of space. Arkham has been known to get way bigger because you have multiple locations. Earthborne Rangers, not so much. So let's get to the similarities. They are both 1 to 4 player co-op card games. I don't want to say deck builders because the deck building in Earthborne Rangers feels very limited to what Arkham has. And I'm not talking just about Arkham has so much product out. But the thing about Arkham Horror that really, really gets me is that it is a very story-driven game that has choices that lead to stuff. And it's about a mythos I love. I love the Lovecraft mythos. I love horror in general, even though it's usually pretty tacky, cheesy, and bad. But in Arkham, you do deck building. You have experience, there's lore, there's resource gathering, resource management, choices. There is an RNG Chaos token bag, which is why we have this card here, because if whatever token you draw, if it is a symbol of some sort, that's a number, like the skull, it will tell you exactly that effect. And those are all things I enjoy about the game, but it also comes back to the type of game player I am. I'm a person that really enjoys, like, Dark Souls. When I first played Dark Souls, I couldn't really get into it because it was really frustrating. But Dark Souls, my experience with Dark Souls, it's kind of like what I thought Earthborne Rangers would be. I like the freedom, the exploration, but Dark Souls is very punishing for that. Arkham is similar-ish, but Arkham tells you at least this is the path to go on. So it doesn't give you that wide net to wander around and make too many mistakes. One of the things that bothers me is that Earthborne Rangers is supposed to have this wide open world story building system without any of the pressures of Arkham. And I find that very odd because just by looking at it, they're very similar games. And one of the arguments of Arkham is that Arkham doesn't last long because you have to replay the campaign every time you make a new character, and you already know the story and the outcomes and the choices to make. And I ask people, you know, does that stop you from actually enjoying stuff? I don't know how many people, you know, play the same game over, read the same book, watch the same movie or TV shows. Does that prevent you from actually doing it? Most of the times I see that is because people just didn't like it in the first place. And I was like, okay. They also complain that Arkham is very long. And yes, it can be. It used to have an 8 campaign that was an 8-round format. And now they've been experimenting with different stuff. So we'll leave that to the future, what happens. But when you're not having fun in a game, it is a torturous journey. And I can see where Arkham is very hard and punishing. Because Arkham likes to beat you up, and it likes to do a bunch of surprises. We have what's called the Mythos deck, which gives you bad things, and you have to test. And usually test against your stats. Sometimes things like Obscuring Fog. But your stats are these printed fixed numbers. They're always that. They can be modified to be less than that. But it's really rare. You have your health, your sanity, and you have your deck. And in Arkham, you always can do something. I've never actually had it where my turn was absolutely dead. And that's why I like Arkham. Earthborne Rangers, we have our deck. We don't really have stats per se. We have what's called energy. This allows some manipulation for deck building because certain cards have a price that's related to the number here of the energy you generate, but that's not the energy you spend to play the card. It has not really a chapter format where you're trying to beat a clock to the game or you lose the scenario. It has more of a, hey, you're trying to put X objectives onto this to get out of here to go do something else. And if you don't pass it and you run out, you don't die, you just kind of pass out in the woods, which seems kind of weird. But Arkham's format and here are different on advancement. With Arkham, you can fail forward. If you did poorly and you're still in the early parts of the game usually about the last 2 scenarios, if you start losing, you'll perish, but sometimes Arkham is very forgiving and just pushes you along and lets you fail forward, like I tell people. So just because you're getting beat up doesn't mean the game is over. Earthborne Rangers doesn't really have that. It has a 30-day time limit, and your questing system and your goals and objectives aren't very clear. To advance in Earthborne Rangers and in Arkham, you're doing tests to put things here. Earthborne Rangers has a very unique system, which I really like. I like this Gloomhaven system. So we have this pundit square of modifiers. I've never seen a modifier below -2. I don't think there's one that exists. And then we have this down here. This is a trigger that triggers random things in the game. From the weather to animals to just environments to quests. And sometimes it's really helpful, sometimes it's really good. But it's very ambiguous when this is going to be helpful or good. Arkham, you always know what you got to be up by, and usually your stats, you know. As you can see with your energy pool, your spirit value is always going to be 1 of whatever energy you spend. fine with that. But you can't really boost that stat. And this is where I kind of have some issues with how punishing it can be. And there's only a -2. There's only one for each of the abilities you have: awareness, spirit, focus, and fitness. But that's not what really bothers me. This is what really bothers me. So we have an encounter deck. If we drew this as a test, we have to add 1 damage to each being within reach. And within reach is basically your play area, the area up in front of you, that's like the open area. My character, this is not my character by the way, I had this come up a lot, and this was destroying me. And I couldn't pass it, because it's a focus test. It requires blue energy. My focus value is 1. And if I failed this test, I was just stuck. There was nothing I could really do to advance the game state. Drawing of cards is a focus test where you have to spend an energy. Well, if I have to spend my energy to do this, I can't draw cards. I can't actually pass this test. I could try to beat it up, but I don't have any attacks in this game. This game is very weird about combat. And because it's a plant, I can't talk to it to actually put advancement on it. I could always try to do the fit test to traverse it and put it, but again, this modifier would have killed everything I had in play. And this encounter set's really brutal. I actually really hate this encounter set. In Arkham, most things don't kill everything you have in play. They'll destroy 1 thing, maybe 2 things, but I've never run into that issue. So, telling me that this is less punishing than Arkham is kind of weird. Arkham has a lot of workarounds. Your characters have a lot of abilities. Earthborne Rangers are usually 1 text line abilities. And Earthborne Rangers is very weird about progression. Arkham has an experience point system. Earthborne Rangers has a weird mission system. In Arkham's progression system, you gain X amount of experience for doing certain tasks. And after you finish the 1 scenario, you can start buying upgraded version of cards in your base deck, or cards that only come as a powerful ability. Earthborne Rangers, you're doing fetch quests, which I don't really mind fetch quests. I just don't like the RNG nature of some of them. You don't really upgrade your cards in Earthborne Rangers. You're just playing the standard deck from your starting class and your starting abilities, and that's kind of what you get. Your cards that you gain are rewards for doing quests, which is cool. I have no problem with that. But I do have issues that I don't know a fixed path of what I'm building towards or what I'm trying to do with my character. Well, I should know what I'm doing with my character. But I don't understand what the value of these cards are going to be in the future. And it bothers me because when I'm trying to build a character and play a game how I want to play it, not knowing rewards or paths to go down, kind of throws a huge disconnect to me about like fairness and balancing and progression. I don't really like that part of Earthborne Rangers. I was under the assumption that it was going to be like most card games where, you build your deck and play it, but this shares a lot more in common with like Marvel Champions and Lord of the Rings, where you're just trying to build a deck to do the scenarios. And if you're playing the campaigns the way they're designed, this is less flexible. I have noticed this is way less flexible than Arkham. Arkham, you can swap out cards if you're failing forward. Yes, it costs you experience. That's your punishment. This, you can't even do anything about it. And when you do get cards, you can't add them to your deck until you actually rest. So if you don't leave a location in camp, you just pass out in the woods, and it's just like, yeah, I did this quest, but I passed out. And you wake up the next day, and I'm just like, that's kind of weird. I feel like in Earthborne Rangers, you have to build more of a jack-of-all-trades character because of how limited your energy pool is for testing. So this requires like a focus with evade, or whatever this symbol is, I forgot. And you pitch cards just like Arkham. But a lot of these cards, and there's no wild icon too, which Arkham helps a lot with having a wild icon. So even if you're bad at a test, like this would be equivalent of that, 1 fist, 1, I can still boost this to a 3. I don't have to pay an energy and hope I draw a 0. And a lot of times in this specific scenario deck, I drew lots of -1s. So it soured my experience a lot. And I was like, well, I could draw more cards and pitch stuff, but having a 1 focus in the focus test of drawing a card, I couldn't do it. And I was just like, I can't do anything this round, and I had 4 rounds of that. I've never had that experience in Arkham. Arkham, you can always evade, fight, investigate, move around, do something. Earthborne Rangers, you really can't. You just kind of deal with the stuff in front of you, and if you can't deal with it, you hope your friend can deal with it, and if they can't deal with it, you're just sitting there getting beat up. And that comes to the similarity of the Mythos phase. You always have 3 actions unless something took away an action. Earthborne Rangers, your actions for your turn are literally limited to your energy pool. And some cards will cost 2 energy. Like playing this card costs 1 energy minimum. So it's just a dwindling resource. It gets recycled and pumped up when you end the phase. But at the end phase, you're going to draw another encounter card. Just like in Arkham, you'll draw another Mythos card. And these start stacking up. Specifically in this scenario, if 2 fogs were on here, that would be a 6 skill test versus Wendy's 3 books. Hopefully I had the cards to pitch with the book icons to actually give me this, kind of like this unexpected courage. It's a wild icon. It could be any of the stats I want. Versus, Earthborne Rangers doesn't have wild icons. It doesn't have a neutral class. You get to play what you picked, and honestly, a lot of the cards in this game do not have multiple icons unless they're the rewards. So it feels a little unbalanced to me to say that this is easier than this. They're both RNG on generation. But if you notice something about how thick the Mythos deck is in Arkham, that's a 15 card deck, so that's probably about 30. Earthborne Rangers has tons and tons of repetition because the encounter deck is so small. Arkham adds more variety. Arkham also has more triggers that require you to reshuffle the deck, take the discard, put it back in. So you'll probably get the same thing, but not always. And in Arkham, you have a resource pool of income. You start the game with 5 resources. This, you start with energy. And energy is a resource pool. You get it back. But you can save your resources over to the next part. So if you have cards that you can't play in the beginning, you can play them later. Or if you have abilities that require you to spend to pump up your stats, you can do that. I have not seen that in Earthborne Rangers. I don't know why that's not a thing in the game. As far as story-wise, Arkham is very straightforward and direct with it. Yeah, the writing is cheesy, it's tacky, it has to do with Lovecraftian nightmares, and it's easy to say, the understanding of the Eldritch Gods is beyond human comprehension. But you know what? That fits with the lore. I'm perfectly fine because that fits the actual narrative. Arkham is dark, depressing, and gloomy, and I'm like, yeah, it's a Lovecraft mythos. It's kind of supposed to be that way, so I can understand if you don't like that. Earthborne Rangers is not the lighthearted, fun game either. I actually have a character that's completely built based around Munchausen syndrome. I hurt people, and then I heal them to get basically advancement points, which, that's the trait of a psychopath or someone that is extremely mentally unstable. And I guess that's my fault. I built my character that way. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted a dog and a bird. I just wanted to have an animal army. So that was kind of just a little weird thing that people didn't notice. Earthborne Ranger also has a lot of very descriptive parts of predators eating prey and people. Spoilers. So I'm not seeing the light jaunt through nature because some of it is actually pretty descriptive. And I was like, yeah, that's very edgy and emo-ish. I think I'm going to go cut myself now. So story-wise, the dark, gloomy atmosphere, this is a facade to me of, hey, you're a ranger. And I was thinking, well, cool, I'm going to be like an army ranger. And he's like, no, you're more like a park ranger. And it's like, okay. Well, park rangers are usually armed, and then it just turned out to, no, you just are randomly questing and helping people, and you don't have a lot of weapons in this game. For a play-as-your-way game, combat is almost non-existent. Most of the time, you're trying to get triggers from these, like this is a combat trigger, and hoping, like this cat here has this trigger, will attack the environment. Usually they attack you, but sometimes they'll attack their prey. Too bad Kitty here doesn't like this razor wire, because this razor wire is awful. And that's kind of the luck of the draw of the setup. You can leave all this stuff out and hope eventually that it'll take care of itself and not screw you over, but I haven't had that in my experience. It's usually get rid of the stuff, just like every other game. If it's an obstacle or a threat, get rid of it. Arkham is very direct in that, and Earthborne Rangers, not so much. I do like the predator and prey interactions. I think that's a great idea. I just think it doesn't work as well as people think it does. And since everything is up to RNG, that favoritism, balance, whatever, fairness, kind of doesn't exist. Like, knowing this, if you have to do it two, and you have to spend focus energy, but if you only have one, and you fail, and you draw, and it triggers, and something attacks you, and you start losing, you're not really having the freedom. You're just stuck. In Arkham, at least you can draw cards, and you don't have to test. It's automatic. It's like, oh, I just want to spend one of my actions to draw a card. Oh, look, another unexpected courage. This brings me up to 7/6. Cool. Now I know my modifiers. I should know what's in the bag, because before you start the campaign, it's going to tell you what to put in the bag. So you look for your worst modifiers, and you can basically pitch cards or keep on drawing cards. Yes, there are weaknesses that you can draw that Earthborne Rangers doesn't have, which Arkham is, notorious on how good or bad they are, which if you draw it, bad stuff happens. Can't be done. And that's from your deck. But Arkham doesn't punish you for deck draw as bad as Earthborne Rangers. In Earthborne Rangers, if you run out of your deck, you lose. You just pass out. And when you have objectives and goals that require you to leave a location and do stuff in the same day or within a certain time frame, you don't get to leave. You're just stuck. And I was like, okay, this just seems like filler now. When you have objectives to pull off in a certain amount of time, and you're just constantly passing out, and you're stuck with the same 15 cards that just destroy your playstyle, you don't really have that freedom. If you're new to how deck building games are and stuff, you always want to read the prologue. And the Arkham prologue and how to play is actually pretty good. I understood this game very clearly, openly, and easily without having to read all the rules first. Earthborne Rangers has one of the worst prologues I've ever seen. In fact, it's not even helpful for learning how to play the game, because it's required that you actually know how to play the game. They did errata it in the FAQ, but that should have been something caught in playtesting. I highly suggest that you don't actually do the prologue in Earthborne Rangers, because it is atrocious. It's boring, it's not fun, and it really is just a mess. It doesn't help you with gameplay. Instead, I highly suggest, before you start a game of Earthborne Rangers, read Creating Your Rangers, understand all this, and then start reading about your background of your 4 classes. And it's actually nice, they give you a card list. This is all the cards you're going to get for that class. And then you're going to go off to your specialties, which again, these are all the cards you're going to get for that class, minus the reward cards. So understand that, then actually just go to the first mission. And here's where I got in an argument about Jason about game design. He says Earthborne Rangers is super easy with one player, and that's why we're not advancing as fast as we should be. And I actually took his challenge, because I hate the argument, oh, you got to play it 10 times. And I did play it 10 times, just to make a point. Yeah, you could advance super easy, barely inconvenience, because you're not drawing these as much, you don't have as a lot of encounter stuff to deal with. And the weather effects aren't hammering all the players at one time. You can do that with Arkham, and it feels much more fluid and progressive. You might not win the fight, because Wendy's fight value is terrible in the first scenario of, but there are other ways to advance the agenda. Usually Arkham has multiple paths to get out of the situation. Not so much in Earthborne Rangers. It's either do what it tells you to do if you want to advance, or do nothing. And I don't think that's the, free, less pressure. That's just a exercise in patience of RNG and frustration to me. With that, Earthborne Rangers is very ambitious. It has a huge, huge story. We have this book here of basically quests and story plot. We have our campaign tracker. In the first campaign, or first box set of Arkham, Night of the Zealot, it's only 3 missions long. And the box is about $50 to $60. I usually find them on sale. And this is the core box I just used to teach people how to play Arkham Horror. I actually have tons and tons of Arkham Horror stuff. So if you're wondering why the decks are the way they are, that's the reason I haven't shuffled it. It has a lot of really cool concepts. You actually gain NPCs that give you quests. You have NPCs at certain fixed locations on the map. And that's really cool. The NPC generation on the trails, where you're not going to a city, are randomly generated out of a stack of 15 cards. You may or may not ever see that NPC again. And when you see that NPC, you have to clear them to get their quest, which I don't have a problem with, because that makes sense. You got to do something, you have to quest, and okay, now I can talk to you. And they give you a quest, and you attach a mission called Helping Hand to them. I despise the mechanic on Helping Hand, especially for games that want to give you quests. Helping Hand has a stipulation that this is a mission card that will go away if you don't complete it that day. Some of the NPCs want to go very, very far away that just can't be done. Some of them are just like, oh, let's just wander around until I find a spot I like. And I'm like, that seems kind of weird. Why don't you just stay with the party? But instead, they just want to wander off. And that's just frustrating. Because it's really a time tax. Because the next time that NPC comes up again, if you want that quest, you have to clear them. Which means you have to waste actions to basically get the same quest you already know. I'm not really understanding why that's a thing. If someone gives you a quest, why would they just abandon it halfway? And in one time scenario we were one space away from going to where that guy wanted to go to, versus him going back 3 spaces just to go back to his hometown. And I was just like, that doesn't make sense. It's easier to go back home than to go forward or stay the night with us. Weird. Very, very weird. Helping Hand, I think, is just a garbage card, and that needs to be errated. But that's really frustrating, because Arkham doesn't give you that. Either you do it or you lose. Not go back and do it and, oh, we didn't do anything except waste time. I don't like wasting time. If there's no progression, and it just feels like you're rolling a rock up a hill just to be crushed by that boulder every 10 seconds, why is that not frustrating or punishing? How is that easier? And I get the plan. You could just say, screw it, I don't want to do the mission, I don't care about rewards. Then why do it in the first place? I play games because I like advancement, I like loot, I like rewards. And the argument I've been given is like, well, the story. And I was like, okay. The story is weird in Earthborne Rangers. And I say weird as in the theme and the concept and a lot of the explanations of how things are. I don't really understand if these people actually have dealt with wild animals. Having the animals attached to certain biomes, that's really cool. But one of the biomes has deer. Deer are very skittish. Deer will not be in your way. Unless, I guess, they're city deer and they're used to people. But most of the time, deer out in the woods want nothing to do with people. As soon as they hear a twig snap, they're going to get out of your way. They don't need to have this clear. They're not going to have this fatigue issue where they're blocking you and you start taking basically damage. It's not damage, but it's burning your deck through fatigue. And that'll bring me to the fatigue mechanic, which I will talk about more. I don't really get it, because a lot of the writing and the story aspects just don't work for me. And I have a background where I used to hunt a lot when I lived in Louisiana. Man-eating predators will not be your friend. Ever. And I'm not talking about like, oh, we caught a domesticated animal or a cub and we raised it around people. I'm talking about like literally, here is a man-eating tiger. Go pet it. You'll be its friend. That's not how these things work. They will maul you. It's really odd that they wrote that. And it seems like they want to fit the narrative of the, as Jason told me, hippie, peaceful way of doing stuff. I was like, that kind of makes sense, because you're not really fighting a lot of things. Most of the time, it's easier to clear by putting clear tokens by doing this blue part than the fight with the red. A lot of the weapons actually have penalties. If you fail the attack, you get hurt instead. Which kind of makes sense, because if you're going to hit a tiger or cougar here with a club, it's going to claw you. I'm fine with that. But there's not a lot of ways to do combat in this game. It takes away a lot of the play how you want to play. And in my case, I went the opposite route because I'm on doggo. So I got the dog, and it turned me into, I'm not going to be fighting stuff, I'm just going to commune with nature. Only to find out that I can't talk to plants or rocks for some reason. Whatever. I'm just stuck there. Cool. That was a unexpected surprise, and I didn't like that. And I'm going to say I don't like that a lot. So lots of time sinks here. Lots of weird time tags. Lots of fetch questing. Lots of backtracking. And it's so repetitive. And I think that's the part that drives me nuts about it is I just want to advance and do stuff. I can live with the story aspects, how unrealistic and how far-fetched they are, because I am used to the Arkham world, but again, this is just weird supernatural nonsense. But at least my encounter deck has a lot more variety. Most encounter decks are made from random sets. It's not just one fixed deck. So far in Earthborne Rangers, there's only one location we've been to that included multiple encounter decks, but they were a different deck to draw from. And I was like, okay. At least Arkham, you're not always guaranteed to draw the same encounter cards. So it adds a lot more variety to it with the building. This leads me to deck progression. If you're not completing missions or doing anything or advancing the story, you're just wandering around because the game is open world and doesn't care. I don't really feel like you're getting value out of playing the game. Without knowing what quest rewards or paths or things to do or having the ability to do them, you're not making your deck better. I like being able to buy cards. I like having a direct path and exploring and being like, okay, cool. I can do what I'm planning to do to make my character better. You don't really have that in Earthborne Rangers. I kind of wish you did, besides the quest rewards. I really honestly wish you did. Because I like rewards being attached to missions. It gives you a reason to do them. But when they turn into constant fetch quests and time tags and backtracking, it doesn't feel like it's worth it. Because there is an overall mission to this game that you, I guess, have to complete to win. I don't know. We're on like day 12 after 20 hours. We've played this game a lot. And Jason kept on saying, oh, you're not having fun. And I was like, yeah, I'm not having fun. But I'm pushing because I want to see where the game goes. The game has a lot of potential. And I don't really like judging games until I get to that whole potential. But story-wise, I kind of feel like I know where the story is going. It doesn't feel like a surprise. And honestly, I'm not surprised by that. There's, very few brand new ideas or twists or something you haven't seen through the stereotypical TV movie throw or Shyamalan movie. Unless you actually cheat by reading the reward cards, reading ahead in the book and the chapters of the Choose Your Own Adventure system, you don't really know what you're getting. And sometimes we got rewards that just weren't helpful. They didn't help either of us. We're just like, I don't want that card. You don't want that card. What was the point of this? Sometimes we would go to a location and it would cancel a mission. So what we wanted to do, we couldn't do because the game was like, nope, yeah, you went here instead. We're going to take that away from you. And I was like, well, that was unexpected. That's kind of a neat thing, but not really. In fact, doing the quests, a lot of the quests are story-driven, and I kind of don't like a lot of these characters. They're very annoying and kind of stereotypical cringy. I'm not going to say it's bad writing. It's just character design, they're not great. Especially if there's a global precedence to take care of stuff, and people are like, well, I don't want to help you unless you talk to me. And then do some, hoop jumping for me. Arkham, once you get it, that character is fully committed to you and will follow you along and do what you need them to do. I like that about Arkham. Hey, I've talked to you. I've done your nonsense. You want to help us now? Cool. Or we screwed up and you died and I don't have to worry about you. In Earthborne Rangers, if the animals attack the humans technically get knocked out because no one dies in this game yet. You start the day over, which is super great. Because you're going to run into the same encounter cards over and over and over again. And if you're not built to deal with it, you're just stuck there. Wasting time until the RNG favors you. And I'm just like, that's cool. The boredom in this game feels more punishing than the boredom in this. Arkham will get it over with, unless you're playing with a very slow group, which happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but any game, the more people you add, the slower it's going to be. It's just the nature of how things work. And Arkham, you can kind of play your own way better than Earthborne Rangers. You choose your character stat and you know what you're going to be good at doing. You got your will, you got your book, you got your fist, and your foot. These are your fixed numbers. Usually will is mythos stuff and just dealing with sanity. Book is basically getting clues off a location. You have your value. It's printed right there. You know what you got to get. You have your fight value, which is your fist, which is going to be compared to the enemy's fist value. And if you get higher than that, you know you're going to be doing damage. And then if you have your foot, you know you're going to be evading a lot, which is pretty helpful because in Wendy's case, Wendy is a terrible fighter. If she can't kill it, she can evade it at least. You can evade in Earthborne Rangers. It's just time consuming. It's not a free action. You got to spend awareness, and then you got to pitch cards to always do this type of test. So your stats are kind of spread out here, but in just a really weird, disproportionate way, I don't feel that's great. Because it's not just the energy. The energy is the cost value here. The symbols are really what you need, and those symbols come from the cards in your hand. Some items and abilities will add those symbols to the test value, which is similar to Arkham. But with how randomly assorted they are and how limited the card pool is on certain things, it feels very restrictive. So you're not going to fight a lot because, like I said, there's only 3 fight cards in the main in the starting class pickup system. And if you don't invest in all that, you're not going to be doing a lot of combat. You're going to be doing a lot of clear, and if you can see, the clear values are harder than the combat values. I don't know if this is some weird reverse psychology way or, trying to incept you that fighting nature is bad. Feels like it. But if that was the case, why would you make the, talking and behaving in harmony with nature so much more difficult? And this could be the philosophy of, doing the right thing is always harder, which I agree with. But in this game, it just feels very unbalanced. As far as synergies go, there are some really, really broken combos I've noticed in Earthborne Rangers. Some of them are just amazingly broken that it's just like, if you could do this in any other game, it's like, my God. And I get that's part of the speed progression. Arkham has some broken synergies too, and Arkham tries to fix those with the mutated and taboo list that I don't use. But these synergies feel intentionally broken, where Arkham's is more an accidental breaking because of how many cards they are. And because you have these broken synergies, if you want to advance and play, you're going to play a certain way. That freedom is restricted again. Every card game has certain cards that are just guaranteed staples. They're just going to be in your deck because they're super good, and you should always play with them if you actually want to win. I get people tell me that Earthborne Rangers isn't a game about winning. It's a game of exploring. Which, again, I'm kind of confused about what you're doing. Because this isn't like going out in nature, actually looking things and experiencing things in reality. This is sitting in a room, and I don't know what the experience is except an exercise of frustration. We have an obstacle system, like Arkham has the obstacle clearing clues. We have some encounter cards, monsters, and you can see that in Earthborne Rangers. And Arkham, you either take care of it or you get hurt. Earthborne Rangers, you take care of it or you can't advance. And you take fatigue, which is really another weird form of getting hurt. And what fatigue does is it takes cards off the top of your deck and puts them in a separate pile. If you take a wound, all your fatigue cards are lost. You can get your fatigue cards back, but they go in your hand. And that can be really helpful, but it doesn't give you an option because regaining fatigue, some of them are like, oh, you're resting. You're literally taking a rest action by soaking your feet in a stream. I feel like those resting actions should allow you to put your fatigue cards back into your deck at the bottom. But we don't have that option in Earthborne Rangers. You can collect a bunch of fatigue, and in my case, I had the doggo, and I kept on chasing it down to tell it, let me love you, so I can pet you and regain some of my fatigue, which was kind of weird, because I don't know why I do a fitness test to relax, to regain fatigue. But I guess there's a thing about exercise giving you endorphins. But the cards go into my hand, which if we're on a timer to get stuff done, that's not good. It cuts down a lot, and this game has a lot of things that will dump fatigue like crazy. So by not taking care of this stuff, it's going to be in my way, I lose to fatigue. But this is also an obstacle, so we can't even advance that. So having 2 of these and being impossible to pass for my character, not this character, but you're just stuck. It really just isn't great. Being in the same spot and not progressing. In Arkham, at least, there are going to be other locations in play that I can go to. I don't have to do every location. Usually you have to do a combination of 90% of them, but you don't have to do them all. And the enemies, kind of the same way. So you can evade them, like I could evade this cat and it doesn't deal with G fatigue, but I still have to deal with obstacles. Or I could just kill the cat and not worry about it. But this cat will come back fairly quick because of how thin the encounter deck is. In Arkham, usually, you have a lot of time to sit there after you killed something. You don't have to worry about that thing coming back unless you drew another copy of it. And this game, as you can see, has multiple copies of the same thing, just like Arkham does. A lot of your resources are also very restricted in this. I'm not talking about just your energy. Your equipment and items have tokens that go on them, and there's just a restricted amount. And with how hard it is to draw cards in the game, it's not as versatile as Arkham. Arkham also has ways to reload things. That brings me to the story, and I can't critique writing that much. I'm not a great writer. I didn't write the great American masterpiece, but then again, most American writers are awful in my opinion. I don't have a problem with the story, but it feels very disconjointed where technology is bad. We don't like it. We want nature to rule the earth and have it the natural way. But we also want to live and survive. And I was like, well, nature's always trying to kill you. And this is back to my point of, I don't think these people understand nature. Nature is always trying to kill you. I don't understand people that say you can live in 100% perfect harmony. I believe we should try to minimize the damage and not be as terrible to nature. But in general, nature is trying to kill you. We have natural disasters. We have diseases. We have animals. Everything out there is literally trying to kill you. And talking to predators and petting them and be like, oh, good kitty, don't claw my face off, just doesn't happen. I know you see those videos of people that can just do it, but in reality, it's just not the way it works. And the story seems almost hypocritical in that. It wants to be this oh, love nature, everything's going to work out, but my disconnected brain with reality tells me that that's just not going to happen. And that might be the pessimistic side of me. Arkham's story is fairly straight. Go take care of the big bad. You want to save humanity, you got to do this, and that's the price you pay for your actions. This kind of wants to guilt you, and depending on your personality type, you may or may not feel that guilt, but it doesn't reinforce that nature is something that's oh, super wonderful and be saved. If you have a giant predator running around like man-eating tigers, not in this game, kind of, I don't know. You can't just go up to it, soothe it, pet it, and take its weird psychic instinct. Oh, it doesn't want to eat people anymore. That's just not the way it works. Predators are predators for a reason. Prey is prey. And the animals have a very vicious nature cycle. This cat here is a predator. It will kill prey. It will hunt them down. It will deal damage to them. You're going to sit there and watch that, and you're either going to let nature take its course or you're going to encourage it to take its course. So that friendly, lovey-dovey balancing thing seems kind of odd. Because it's not really a balance towards the natural order. It's not even a balance towards fitting in the natural order. In my experience, it has just been really weird in this game what it's trying to do. And I don't know if it's going to be one of those gee whiz, oh, I think in the story, because it doesn't seem like it matters. A lot of your objectives and goals don't really seem to matter because it doesn't punish you and it doesn't really do anything. Spoilers, the first mission didn't matter. Why did we do it? I don't know. In fact, it's really annoying that we wasted more time trying to do the first mission than actually meet people and get quests. But that didn't matter either because there was a trigger, a global trigger that's written on the back of the book that tells you on what day to do this thing. And that's where the exploration punishes you. You're free to go wherever you want in this game. We have this really giant map. And this is where the encourage to explore thing doesn't work. You can go anywhere here. But there are going to be things in the game that tell you got to go somewhere in a certain amount of time. So if you're all the way down here at Tumbledown, and all of a sudden there's a quest all the way up here that says that it's a priority mission that you have to go do, you have to get up there. And usually, I've noticed it gives you 3 to 5 days. 5 days you could probably do it. 3 days, I don't think you can do it. Unless you're just super lucky. And those are hypotheticals, but in my experience, it's kind of how it's gone in the game. Arkham didn't introduce this type of exploration, and this is where I have one of the biggest gripes with when they say this is an open world to explore. Arkham is, you have basically your valley is the scenario, and you have locations in that scenario. You go to those locations. And yes, sometimes when you go to locations, you flip it over, it's going to be like, oh, take damage, bad things happen, spawn monsters. Okay. It's kind of the same with this game. Except in Arkham, you have a actual understandable time point of getting stuff done. Arkham didn't introduce this type of exploring until the Scarlet Keys. And I've read that people hate the Scarlet Keys because it has way too much reading and it's super boring and blah, 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 blah. That's kind of what Earthborne Rangers is to me. This is the Scarlet Keys. Just not interesting to me. At least the Scarlet Keys was, we have an objective, a global threat, go do this and stop the big bad. You have 30 days. Earthborne Rangers is, you have 30 days to just go wander around. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Meet some people, do some quests, whatever. Oh yeah, go take care of this. Okay, but I'm all the way down here. And it's not like you're the only Rangers in the game. There are other Rangers. You meet them right at the beginning of the game. And they just don't want to help you. Doesn't seem like anyone in this game wants to help you story-wise. They all seem to be incompetent, idiot NPCs that are just programmed to do one thing and just be annoying most of the time. Which is really confusing to me. I get their story points to it, but why have characters that actually don't contribute or help? As far as card pool goes, Earthborne Rangers doesn't have very many cards. You have a huge encounter deck. You have a lot of locations, and all that's great with theme and fitting in, but you're not having a huge deck variety kind of hurts the game. And I can't hate on the game because it doesn't have enough cards in the card pool. But it also doesn't feel like it gave you enough cards in the starter campaign. With the core box of Arkham Horror, you can pretty much build most of the characters, and then you'll find better cards in the expansions. And Earthborne Rangers is working on expansions. Don't know when it's coming out. That's to be determined, but rumors are January. And from what I've seen, they are going towards the new Arkham model where you're going to have your Ranger expansion, just like the Investigator expansion, and then you have your Scenario expansion. I don't think it's going to be in the Valley anymore, so I don't know what they're going to do. But as far as like the whole freedom to explore, deck building, advancement, all that, I just don't see the apple-to-apple comparison. This is an apple-to-oranges game. These are not the same game. There's also a really weird thing about clearing certain objectives where you have to put your Ranger token on it. Arkham has this. Usually all your investigators have to be at the same location to do whatever. Most of the time it's because there's going to be a transition that's going to change the game state, so it wants everyone to be there so you know to remove certain locations and add locations. Or it's because thematically that's the exit and we got to be there. Everyone has to be at the exit. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense because I died in the cave-in at Arkham, and so did my friend when he could have left me in the cave-in. But Arkham was like, no. Earthborne Rangers, there's a few scenarios where it doesn't make sense why all the Rangers have to be there. Honestly, the story is like, oh, we all have to be there to listen to a lecture from one guy. Yeah, one guy could go do that while the other can do that. That didn't really synergize and make sense to me from a story standpoint or a plot standpoint. There is a cool thing, though, that everyone who dumps their Ranger token, it adds the skill to the test value. This being one of the original box tokens instead of the errated tokens. But they have a +1 on the back somewhere. There we are. So that adds that value to passing the test. Doesn't add to your own test values. But there's a few locations that is just arbitrarily weird because they'll give you fatigue and they're things that are supposed to help you, but they're in your way. But they're literally things designed to help you. And sometimes you don't want those things. Just seems kind of weird. It's like, oh yeah, I see that shiny thing up in the mountain that we don't need because we know what's in there. but we're going to take fatigue unless we clear it, and I don't want to do that test to put my token there because I got other things to do. In reality, if it was one of those things, you would just tell the other guy, hey, go up there, grab the equipment, and I'll take care of this. Not so much in Earthborne Rangers. So it has some weird, like, dysfunctional Sophie's Choice. Arkham also has a really interesting system when you deck out. If you cannot draw a card from your deck, you just take 1 sanity damage that can be healed if you have the cards, and you get your whole deck back. You don't get to draw the cards, you just get your whole deck back. I'm actually kind of fine with that. But because Earthborne Rangers makes it a timer, and you're always fixed at a 30-card deck, you just pass out. You don't get to add any of your reward cards if you finished a quest. You don't get to leave your terrible location if you're stuck there. Which, trust me, I've been there a lot. Arkham, I've never had that experience because, like I said, Arkham always allows you to do something. It might not be what you want to do, and it might not be the best, but it's better than having multiple dead turns in a row. Because of the way these modifiers are, the card drawing is a test and not, hey, I can just draw a card I need. It's very frustrating. Overall, I actually do think Earthborne Rangers is a great game. But it doesn't fit what I'm used to and what I like about card games. I am not a big fan of Lord of the Rings or Marvel Champions because it is build a deck to beat the scenario. And they weren't really campaign games. They added those expansions by shoehorning them in, and they don't work as well as they could compared to Arkham. Arkham was built ground up for that. Earthborne Rangers is a campaign game. But Earthborne Rangers, I feel, is very deceptive in the way that people are explaining it. It's just as frustrating as hard as Arkham. But I see a lot more limitations to how this game works than Arkham. If you want a challenge, Earthborne Rangers is challenging parts of it. Other parts of it, just I don't feel like I'm being challenged. Arkham is a very challenging game. It is hard because it is basically Dark Souls. This is like I don't know what to really compare it to. I want to say Elden Ring, and this goes back to Lemon with the backlogs. It's a very big game. And Elden Ring, the boss fights are amazing. Like, a lot of the stuff, the exploration of Elden Ring is great. But Elden Ring is also very big. There's a lot of stuff to find, and sometimes you don't know where all it is unless you're cheating. Elden Ring has a very convoluted story. This has a very convoluted story. I mean, don't get me wrong, Arkham has a convoluted story, but at least it makes sense. I like the exploration. I like going around. I like the NPCs. I don't really care for all the other weird stuff going on in this game. And because of how unorganic this feels, it doesn't feel natural in the way that you would actually try to do a story. It's very clunky. This isn't a mind-blowing thing like, oh my god, this is such a new thing. Your NPC pool being RNG'd or fixed and having weird quests that want you to just wander off versus having NPCs that are fixed, they're guaranteed to pop up, they're goal-driven, and you have a system to do. Which seems less of a test in frustration, I feel like Arkham is. I know clear goals. Even though I have played Arkham a lot and I know just about every campaign there is, what to do and how to actually build optimal for it, the experience of choosing new characters, new abilities, new classes fascinates me. Where this feels like everyone's kind of the same, they're just good at the one thing they're supposed to do. The encounter variety, just, I love the fact that I can't just be like, oh yeah, I know that set's really bad, but usually there's going to be other stuff in that, it's just luck of draw. This, I know this set, it's a bad set, we're going to get stuck here for a while, and I'm going to hate it. And that's where the punishment and the balancing thing just doesn't work for me. Having prior knowledge of Arkham Horror doesn't prevent me from actually enjoying myself. Prior knowledge in some of this is kind of just like, oh, here we go again. Back in the nonsense, walking up a hill. Cool. Cool. We're going to do this for a while. You're going to go past that. I'll take care of all the animals. Oh, look, razor wire. I can't do anything about it. So my turns are dead consistently. And I can say, yeah, that's bad deck design on me, but, you know, for what I wanted to do, that was the choice I had to take. I couldn't take the dog with 1 spirit. I couldn't take the bird with 1 awareness. And the only reason I took the 2 fitness was because it was suggested in the book that you always start with 2 fitness. Nowhere did it really give me the hint that focus was going to be super important. It was just like, oh, draw a card. Look at a card and then may or may not draw it. I didn't get that. You don't have to test to do basic actions in Arkham. If I want to draw a card, okay, it's an action. It's one of my 3 actions. If I want a resource to save up for later, that's an action. If I want to go to a different location, that's an action. I mean, it's kind of an action in Earthborne Rangers. And there's always clues to get somewhere. You can wander around usually in a scenario and find a clue value. Even if you're not good at clues, you can go there and try to get clues. You can always do something in Arkham. You always have a base fight strength in Arkham. Earthborne Rangers, you kind of, but, you know, you're not really doing a lot. It's better to just progress by putting influence. And then some things like a plant, well, you're just kind of stuck there unless you want to do, you know, traverse actions if you're bad at them. So it's a really weird dichotomy that I have a problem with. Heard this game was 2 years of R&D, and it just doesn't feel like it. Especially coming from a guy like Andrew Navarro being head of Fantasy Flight. He's had a lot of experience with games that feed off this DNA, which is, you know, even Arkham Horror took its DNA from the Lord of the Rings card game. And Andrew Navarro was there during that time frame. And what they learned. Arkham is very unique. It is a very, very unique game. This is a unique game. It's not very unique to me, but it's unique. And it has a lot of good ideas. Like I said, the NPC, the open world. But the restrictiveness and the story don't grab me. The restrictiveness isn't even a challenge in this. Because it doesn't give you a challenge with the restrictiveness. You're just stuck. There's not enough to modify or change. Your roles aren't super, like, you know, clear. And some of your abilities just don't synergize. The pundit square of bad things, I really like that. I don't know if you should only have 1 -2 in the deck. You should probably put -3s in there. And there's 24 of these cards versus Arkham's usually 12 tokens that go back and always get mixed up. This is a neat idea, but the synergies with this, there's a lot of weird stuff that can go on. And especially cards like this where you can't do anything about it, it's just going to kill all your creatures. It's going to ruin your day. And there's nothing I have yet found to get rid of this functionally. And the fact that this is also an obstacle I can't pass anyway, so I'm just going to waste my time drawing cards and decking out. Or die from everything just attacking me. Arkham, at least it gets it over, and if I'm stuck, at least I can advance. Or I just restart the campaign. Earthborne Rangers, depending on how far you it's not worth restarting the campaign. So you're just beating yourself over a club. And that's where the huge disconnect is in fun. I find this game more punishing than I do with Arkham. This is death by 1,000 cuts to me. This is just decapitation. What I'm trying to do here, either I know I'm going to win or lose, and that's that. I can live with that. What I'm trying to do here, it's just wasting time until the 30-day trigger hits. We are progressing. We are doing the story. I will continue playing Earthborne Rangers just to see it at the end. I don't know if it's going to change my opinion. I'm kind of set on it. I want to say this is an absolute buy. And that's not the point of this video. If you're really interested in these games, try them out. I encourage you to try both out. But I want you to keep in mind that when they say this is easier, less punishing, friendlier, gloomier, it's not. This game is just as frustrating as Arkham with different issues that Arkham has. By its nature, Arkham is a dark game. By its nature, Arkham is not an open world. You are basically, hey, you're in a city, you're in a restricted environment. This has the same illusion of a restricted environment, but it's calling it an open world with a giant map. This has the same testing system, and it's just as random, but it's not as versatile as Arkham giving you these cards, because these change with every scenario. You're always going to know that it's a minus, a 0, or a -2 to a stat. You just don't know which stat. And your energy pool, not having the ability to recover it while you're trying to do stuff, is a game design. It's frustrating when you need it for certain tests, and you're just stuck with it. And not having the flexibility of having a wild icon, like Unexpected Courage here gives you 2 wild icon, so you can apply it to any test. It's a huge bonus. And any class can take this card. Doesn't exist in Earthborne Rangers. This is an emergency panic button, get out of jail free card, by all I'm concerned. And hence why it's a really good card. Your deck is your timer, and you have to do things in a certain amount of time. If you don't finish it, you lose out. Because of how far you are from locations away, if a mission tells you got to be there to do it. And I don't know if it punishes you or not. I just haven't seen any repercussions for failing missions. And, you know, sometimes they'll give you rewards. Sometimes it's just lore that's like, oh, gee whiz, thanks, I guess. But I don't go questing unless I'm going to get loot. And again, I don't know if this is some weird moral test where it's like, well, you should do it for the benefit of humankind, because a lot of the times it doesn't seem like I'm doing anything for the benefit of anyone. Where in Arkham, you're playing the role and you're doing it. This is a very ambiguous system to me. Just wander around, help people, do whatever. You may or may not get a reward. There may or may not be punishments for it. There might be a story element you care about or affects something. But most of the time, it's just like, I kind of just want to know what we're supposed to be doing. You told me to go do this, but now we got a side goal. We're halfway done with the side goal, and now we got this new goal that we should start doing. No, we're going to go finish the side goal, because, again, they'll just wander off back to town for no apparent reason, and we got to start this all over again. I don't know who does a test or who does a quest and not try to achieve it. It's really weird. As far as the art style, Earthborne Rangers have a very weird, cartoony art style. I don't hate it. I actually really do enjoy this art. I like the colors, the vividness, and all that. So I do like the art. I like Arkham's art because Arkham's art is that dark, gloomy, brooding atmosphere. Earthborne Rangers, I have a huge disconnect, but it is true. Nature is very dark at times. I can live with the art. There's a lot of good ideas, and it is a good attempt. I do wish Andrew Navarro and his team well. This definitely was not a game I was expecting. I like structures, I like objectives, and I don't feel like I have any of that with Earthborne Rangers. And again, when people compare this to Arkham Horror, they're not the same game. I've stated that over. Is Earthborne Rangers easier to understand than Arkham? I don't think it is. I know a lot of that has to do with how I was told it was like Arkham. But having these fixed stats and these explained to me in a different way, I thought it was going to be fixed stats, not energy. And then I get kind of confusing with the deck building, because there are cards with values on them that have these pips. On the side, it tells you need to have 2 awareness skill to actually play this card. So sometimes you're not going to remember that stuff. Got to be kind of confusing. Arkham, it's pretty clearly labeled what a card's value is, if I can find one. The cards are actually like color-coded in a way that works, because those are your classes. And they are going to have, oh yeah, this is a starter deck. But they'll usually have an icon, dots in the corner. A lot easier to read, I think. I mean, Earthborne Rangers has the dots in the corner, but that's just how many gear you can have in play. Earthborne Rangers is also very restricted on items. Arkham gives you much broader variety, because you have 2 hand slots, you have a body slot. I guess they included a mask slot in this new expansion. They have a foot slot, but it doesn't exist. They call it you only restrict to 1 footwear item. You have 2 spell slots, and you have tarot card slots. And some things can modify those slots. Earthborne Rangers, there are some things that let you reduce your item capacity, but that's restricted to a class. If you have pip values that go over 5, you got to discard it. So you can't have 2, 3 items out. You have to toss one of them. Kind of hurts. But so far, from what I've seen, there's only like 1 3 card for each ability anyway, so it shouldn't really matter. As far as the control areas of the game, it's kind of weird because your character, when they have to put their token on a location, they're actually not at that location. That's kind of confusing to me. You have obstacles in one ranger's way in their play area, but they'll also have obstacles in another ranger's way. Like, everyone has their own threat area in this example. In Arkham, this is usually your threat area. That is your location area. Here we have what's called your reach area. And what's within reach is basically anything in your threat area, but then everything in the open world area at top that's going to be under the path. Some of the lots of terminology. Keywords aren't always bolded in Earthborne Rangers. In fact, a lot of them aren't. Like here we have obstacle, but that's not bolded. That's easy to miss. We have ambush on this cat. It's not bolded, easy to miss. In Arkham, we have like revelation, focus. Everything that's a keyword is bolded. So if you don't know what it means, you can flip through and find it fairly easy. There's a lot of small text on these cards, and they're kind of hard to read. So as far as learning and ease of access, again, it's what you're used to and what you learn. I play a lot of games, and I'm usually pretty quick to catch on and see all those things. There's also, again, confusions like this, because the color coding throws you off on the symbols, because Arkham is usually, if it's a will test, it's going to be will icons. Plain and done. If it's a fist, it's going to be fist. Sometimes it will actually tell you in the text, though, replace that with another thing, which is like, oh, good, but you told me that, bolding it to remind me. Not so much here. You bolded both, and I'm just like, okay, cool. Is Earthborne Rangers fun compared to Arkham Horror? I'm having fun doing jank combos, talking to animals and, people, and just doing broken combos. I am not having fun when I hit a wall and I can't do anything about it. In Arkham, it's really rare that I don't have fun. I always have an option in Arkham. It might not be the best option, but I have an option. If I have to get away, I can get away. Earthborne Rangers, you can't run away, you're just stuck, because this is an obstacle. The quests, very straightforward in Arkham. It's like, oh, we got to do this to the objective to pass or punish whatever. Earthborne Rangers, the ambiguity of it confuses me because I don't know if we really need to. I can't prioritize stuff. I can't plan. And then sometimes, like I said, it's frustrating going to a location only to find out you have to go to another location way, way out of your way, even though you have multiple quests to achieve in an X amount of time. And it's really just a Sophie's choice of like, well, what do we do here that's good? And I'm not reading forward in the campaign log. I'm not cheating with it, so I don't really know. That's part of the mystery and adventure, I guess. But it doesn't really make sense to me. Most games that want to give you tons of quests give you all the time in the world to complete it, except for the main quest. It's unique in that time spec crunch. But that time crunch adds more pressure than I feel like with Arkham. And as far as like a logic standpoint, I'm bored. This game is very boring. It doesn't make sense to me, which just frustrates me. The Ranger catch doesn't make sense to me. I didn't even go off about the sinkhole because that just turned into a weird rant. But a lot of the choices, dialogue, and effects of this game, it's like, what is the point? This game just doesn't give me a lot to do. The exploration concept that everyone talks about adventure is like, not really. I don't feel an adventure to it when the game is just like, okay, cool. Go do this. But I want to do this. What's over there? And then with the randomness of RNG, of getting characters, or events, or stuff to go off, it's just like, can't we just find these guys? We already know what they want us to do. I don't understand why I got to do this time tax over and over again. Or these fetch quests that are just really, they seem very pointless. Being straight direct, having some pathing, yeah, Arkham, sure. We'll call the Valley map an open world to explore. But logically, to me, it's the same thing. You're in a city, it's just, instead of wandering off and rebuilding this constantly, because every time you leave a path, you get a new path deck, so you're always putting stuff back and forth. Arkham tells you to take everything you need for that scenario out, put it out, and do it straightforward. It doesn't want to surprise you by saying, hey, add stuff from the box. It usually tells you to put it off the side in the play area. Earthborne Rangers is constantly going back in the box, constantly RNGing, bringing up new characters, and it's just like, cool. And a lot of the times, it's the same cards over and over again. So it just doesn't have the variety of an adventure. It feels like you're just wandering down the same thing over and over again. And it's just like, yay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. It doesn't flow well to me. If you've gotten this far in my video, I really appreciate it. If you agree with me or disagree with me, leave me down below in the comments. I really want to know. Like I said, this isn't a game for everyone, and this isn't me just, 100% bashing on Earthborne Rangers. This is just really a comparison of why I don't think this is fair to be compared to Arkham Horror. There are different things about it, but a lot of them are also the same. And as I've stated before, this has all the flaws of Arkham Horror, but none of the benefits of Arkham Horror. The issue really comes down to, I don't see how people are comparing these games. They are two different games. And my perspective of playing both games, and 20 hours is a lot of time to invest in, I feel like I'm fairly confident in my assumption of how this game goes. I have reread the rules, checked everything, dealt with all the nonsensical stuff, and I'm just not having fun with this. I am interested in seeing where the story goes because I could be wrong. I always love that part because maybe it will be surprised that wasn't the story you're expecting. But I kind of feel like it is. Other than that, GG's everyone. Still doing the 2023 giveaway at 95 subscribers, I believe. 5 more, I'll start sending out stuff to people who won. Take care. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll be back.